So in this section of the book, it's where Brooke confesses his feelings to Meg, and Meg is unsure of how to deal with them. As we know her to be like this mature character, but instead she chooses to act flirtatious in a way that is often condemned in the book. She comments that Anne Muffet's foolish feelings of coquetry came to mind, and even though she acknowledges that they are foolish and are not a good way to interact with others, it says that Meg, taking a naughty satisfaction, trying her lover's patience and her own power, still chooses to act this way, which disappoints and kind of startles Brooke, who's not used to seeing this kind of behavior from her. And this reminds me of like Meg's character overall, because she's the oldest sister and she's trying to set a good example for the rest of her sisters. We see her, like, her lesson in the book is to try and focus less on wealth and to focus more on family. However, like, even though we're like 3 points later at this point, she still hasn't learned this lesson. We see when she goes to the ball with the Muffets, how she dresses up and how she tries to act like them. But Lori like kind of shows us disapproval when she goes home and confesses to her mother that she doesn't really want to act like that, and she doesn't think it's a good way to act. However, like 3 years later, when she's out with Sally Muffet buying clothes, she sees this expensive cloth and she still buys it, knowing that they're poor and they can't afford it, just because she doesn't want to seem poor in front of Sally Muffet. This contrasted Amy, who in volume 1 of the book was like really absorbed in wealth, and she was trying to learn like Meg to be less focused on it, but she didn't really succeed. She would often forget that she was supposed to remember this until Beth got ill and she had to stay at Aunt March's house, where she got the turquoise ring and it's kind of stuck with her. And we see that 3 years later she has improved. She's more humble, she's showing more humility, and she's trying to care more about others and putting them first instead of herself. Where she still has this like want and desire for wealth, just let it control her life and let her make bad decisions like Meg does. This reminded me of Jo, whose lesson was to try and learn to control her temper. And she is largely successful, like we see in 3 years later. She's like developed techniques like her mother has to deal with her temper. But we also see her fall victim to desire for wealth like her sisters, even though she wasn't very concerned with it before. She writes these sensationalist stories even though she hates and despises them because, you know, they grip her money. However, instead of wanting this money for herself, she's trying to use it to support her family and to buy them nice things and help her family situation improve, which kind of contrasts Meg and Amy, who just kind of want it for themselves so they can look and feel nice. The only character who doesn't seem to like fall victim to like this desire for wealth is Beth, who from the very start is kind of she's not perfect, because no one is perfect, but out of all of the characters we see, she's the closest to perfect. She's selfless, she's patient, she's earnest and hardworking. Her fault was that she was shy, but she does work to improve it. Like very early on in the book, we see her confront Mr. Lawrence and get to know him, build this close relationship with him, and we see her get close with Fred, who is a boy, and we know that she's not very good with people, especially boys, and so she does like largely overcome this shyness. She's selfless, so unlike Meg and Amy, she wants to help everyone else rather than herself. She's focused on everyone else rather than herself. In fact, she catches scarlet fever from trying to help another family when Meg and Jo wouldn't help her. However, even though she's the closest to perfect, she's the one to fall ill and she's the one to suffer. So at this point in the book, we've learned that Beth is dying, and it kind of follows the saying of bad things happen to good people, because unlike her sisters, she is trying to help. She's trying to, you know, she's the closest to perfect. She only cares about everyone else. She doesn't really care about herself, and yet she is the one who's about to die rather than her sisters who are getting married and going to Europe and having these nice lives. So, talking about how all the characters develop, this goes into volume 1 of the book, which focuses on like teaching a moral lessons and the importance of family. For instance, in chapter 8, this is the chapter where Amy burns Jo's book as she learns that she can't just let her anger control her, because she'll make a decision that she regrets. And Jo learns that she just can't hold on to anger and keep blaming someone long after something's happened. She's learned to forgive because she almost let her sister die and greatly regrets it afterwards. And also, in addition to individual lessons, we also learn like life lessons in general. For instance, in chapter 11, the girls try a no work, all play system, but they quickly realize they would rather work some because they needed to appreciate their play and to survive with their family. It also focuses on the importance of family, especially with Lori, because quite a few times Joe comments that he seems a little lonely and young folks would do him some good, and comments how we are only girls but we should be glad to help. We see Lori before then, he's very kind of shy, he's reserved, over when he starts to accompany the March sisters, he starts to develop in a way he hasn't before. Like, he starts to come out of his shell and he's encouraged to try out school instead of just running away from his grandfather. And this contrasts Volume 2, which puts more of a focus on like romantic affairs and wealth, is this chapter where all of the girls really start to show their desire for wealth and their desire for romantic relationships. Meg obviously gets married to Brooke. Amy's talking about how someone in the family needs to get married to bring money into the family. She talks about how she wouldn't mind marrying Fred. Lori admits his feelings for Lori admits his feelings for Joe, even though she doesn't really want to end a relationship with him, but he kind of dwells on it and goes to Europe. There's also Mr. Brer, the German man she meets in New York, who also shows an interest in her, even though she's interested in him. But Joe also wants Beth and Lori to become a couple because she thinks they would be good for another, because, Lori, he's very outgoing, he's also very wealthy. He'll be able to take care of Beth, who's more shy and reserved, and she would also be able to calm him down.
So, excuse me, let me pose your question. You kind of got to it already, which just shows that you've analyzed the passage, which is good. So we know that literature is often a social commentary. It's a way in which the author reflects on the world in which we live. So what do you imagine is Alcott's lesson about wealth? What is she trying to, what lesson is she trying to extend to us about the function of wealth?
I think she's trying to explain that wealth can corrupt. We see this primarily in Meg, who does, like, as I mentioned before, she buys these books of wealth, even though it means that her husband can't buy the coat that he needs for this bad weather that's coming. And so, yeah, we see the wealthy people who are often ignorant. They're often self-centered, and they don't focus on the big picture. They focus on all of their possessions rather than their relationships, as we see is important. But I also think it shows that both, while it can corrupt, doesn't necessarily have to. Because we see Amy, who, like, before getting the turquoise ring, she was very self-absorbed. She was trying to make herself seem like this lady that she was. However, when she got this ring, even though it was, like, a piece of value, and it should have, like, bolstered her need for wanting wealthy things, she instead, like, takes it to remember to be humble. And we see, like, later on when she goes to Europe, she talks about how she is going to Europe to see if she can see if she can become an artist, but if she isn't an artist, she wants to come back and use what she learned there to help actual artists reach a higher level. So while it can corrupt, I think the text is trying to prove that it doesn't have to, and it can be used for good.
Okay, thank you, Fatimah.
Thank you.